Mixing vocals is difficult, and holding on to misconceptions or myths about mixing them makes the process even harder. Whether you're new to mixing or you've been doing it for a while, this video should help identify some info that isn't correct or maybe isn't helping you with your mixing. With that said, let's get into 5 vocal mixing myths. First up, we have de-essers are the best for controlling sibilants. De-essers are the most convenient way to control sibilants, but there are other methods that sound better. For example, multiband compression allows for greater control over the attack and release of the attenuation. Dynamic EQ allows for more precise attenuation. Clip gain is better for clean reduction of sibilants, even if it is less accurate, but by far the best way to attenuate sibilants is with an FFT editor like this RX program. Now it's time consuming, but with the vocal imported into this program, we could find the areas that contain the relevant info and then highlight it. Then we can reduce the amplitude of the region in a manner that introduces less artifacts than EQ or compression. Now clip gain is still the cleanest, however, this method is the best combination of accuracy and clean processing. Now you could definitely still use de-essers if you want. I definitely do when I don't have the time to edit the vocal sibilants. But just know that if you do have extra time, there are methods that are better. Let's listen to the difference between de-essed vocals and the same vocal section controlled with an FFT program.
Think it was impossible, may have been a bit of trouble. Think it was impossible, may have been a bit of trouble. Think it was impossible, may have been a bit of trouble.
The next myth is that saturation creates a biting, aggressive vocal. Now this can certainly be true, but this generalization gives mixing engineers the wrong idea. Saturation can be used to create a more aggressive and forward vocal. However, it could also have the opposite effect. When transients are reshaped with the soft clipping that most saturators introduce, while the input is increased, it has a similar effect to aggressive compression. The transients are often what gives a vocal an aggressive, percussive, and cutting sound, so their retention is definitely important if that's the goal. Additionally, if the low frequencies trigger the saturator, then the harmonics will likely form in the low mids. If this region is amplified too greatly, it will mask higher frequencies that are associated with clarity and intelligibility. Now, if you want to use a saturator for an aggressive and forward vocal, it's best to use frequency-specific saturation and consider a saturation shape that's closer to clipping. Squaring the wave will be more audible and indicative of an aggressive sound, while introducing higher order harmonics that amplify the regions associated with clarity. So let's take a listen to saturation that doesn't cause a more forward vocal, and just keep in mind that saturation doesn't always have the same effect. It depends on what range is saturated and the wave shaping that's involved.
Think it was impossible, may have been a bit of trouble. Think it was impossible, may have been a bit of trouble. Think it was impossible, may have been a bit of trouble.
Next up, let's cover how only chorusing creates a stereo vocal. Now, a chorus effect does create a stereo signal by creating variation between the left and the right channels. However, a lot of processing does this. In fact, any effect that introduces differing processing between the left and the right channels will do this. For example, if I place a stereo reverb on a mono vocal, reflections will differ between the left and the right channels, creating a stereo signal with a side image. The same could be said for delay and any other temporal effect. If I equalize a vocal with a filter on the left but not the right, vice versa, or I simply vary these two filters, I'll create info in the side image. Even delinked compression, in which the left and the right channels are treated differently, will cause this variation that's needed to create a side image. So, although chorusing is seen as the main way to make a vocal wider or have varying info in the left and the right channels, just about any processor can do this. Now let's take a listen to a mono vocal quickly becoming stereo if processing is added to one channel but not the other.
Think it was impossible. May have been a bit of trouble. Think it was impossible. May have been a bit of trouble. Think it was impossible. May have been a bit of trouble.
Real quick, before we get into the next section of the video, Sage Audio is an analog mastering studio. We've been around for 20 years and offer our services for $49 per track. There's an ad at the end of the video if you're interested in learning more. The next myth that we're going to cover is that ducking is needed for on-top vocals. So a lot of engineers think you need to duck the instrumental in some way if you want the vocal to sit on top of the mix. The idea is that the surrounding instrumentation is dipped every time the vocal is present. Now, whether you do this with a compressor or with something like Sooth 2, know that this isn't needed at all. All you need to do is make the lead vocal equal in loudness to the instrumental. The majority of pop tracks create this equal relationship between the lead and all other instrumentation. For what I work on, it always seems a little too loud, but I can't argue that this is how the majority of finished productions sound. So, the next time your vocal is buried under instrumentation, try sending all instrument tracks to a bus and measure its loudness. Then measure the loudness of the lead vocal with its effects included. If the vocal is lower than the instrumental, simply turn it up. Alternatively, you could just use your ears. If the vocal sounds too quiet, turn it up. If it's too quiet only on occasion, then you need to address the dynamics either through compression or editing. Now let's take a listen to a vocal set to the same loudness as the instrumental. Notice no ducking is needed, just finding the right level.
Think it was impossible. May have been a bit of trouble. Think it was impossible. May have been a bit of trouble. Think it was impossible. May have been a bit of trouble.
Last up, let's cover that pre-delay is needed for vocal reverb. So pre-delay can be useful, but it's not the best way to introduce reverb to a vocal while retaining clarity. All it does is push the initial reflections back, but this doesn't keep those reflections from interfering with subsequent peaks or vocal passages. That said, if vocal phrases are spaced out a good amount, then it would work. But if you have a vocal with a faster cadence, I'd recommend reverb ducking instead. This is basically compression for the reverb while using the original vocal as the trigger. Some plugins will offer ducking as a function. For example, this free emulation of the Bricasti M7 has a ducking function. However, if you use a different reverb and you want to do this, it's not too difficult to set up. Just send the vocal to an aux track and insert the reverb on that auxiliary parallel channel. Next, insert a compressor and set the original vocal track as the external sidechain. Ensure that the vocal is what's triggering the compression, and introduce the settings that you want that create a clear vocal while introducing reflections in a way that achieves what you're trying to. Let's compare reverb with pre-delay to reverb ducking on the same vocal passage. Notice how much clearer the ducked reverb is after the first transient or peak.
Think it was impossible. May have been a bit of trouble. Think it was impossible. May have been a bit of trouble. Think it was impossible. May have been a bit of trouble.
Get professional analog mastering that accurately translates what you hear in your head. Seriously though, when people work with us, they get results. That's why major industry professionals like Keith Urban's producer Aaron Schurz works with us, Grammy award-winning AJ Castillo, Billboard #1 charted artist Megan Lindsay, Grammy award-winning artist Tulis, The Voice singer Cody Ballou, Grammy-nominated producer Tyler Kane, Warner Music artist Ricky Young, and the list goes on. Why waste your time creating masters that don't accurately translate what you hear in your head when you could instantly fix a problem by clicking the link in the description and working directly with professionals who have already done what you're trying to do. We've mastered thousands of songs that accurately translate what each client hears in their head, and it'll work for you too. Click the link in the description now and get direct access to us for personalized analog mastering that accurately translates what you hear in your head.